computer. All right, welcome folks. It's great to see you all. I am going to start my slides. We will officially get started with our meeting. And here we go. All right, I just have a few slides to get us going. And then we'll get into our fireside chat. All right, so welcome to the Scrum Master Power Hour. I wanted to put up a little bit of a mission slide. I typically talk about this, but I'm such a visual person. So I want to talk about why it is that I started this group 2 years ago. I felt that, as we were moving through the beginnings of the pandemic and we were all kind of thrown for a loop, it was an opportunity for us to connect with each other across the globe as Scrum professionals. And I've gathered some really incredible people here to this group to talk about the challenges that we have, the things that we face in our role, and what we encounter every day as we are helping our organizations change. So who am I? Well, I would hope if you showed up here, you know who I am, but just a little bit of a reminder. My name is Patty. I am the founder of Agile Mindset Consulting. I am passionate about helping Scrum Masters on their journey, especially in the very beginning stages. So I do Scrum Master career coaching. I do cohort-based training to help people build their skills. And I also go into companies and help them with their Agile transformation, including their Scrum Master development. And I am out there on the speaking circuit very often. So look for me around the block and I will see you there. All right, our backlog for tonight. So we're doing a little bit of a welcome and an introduction period. So a couple of upcoming events. So this is a bi-weekly meetup. So our next meetup will be March 4th. And it will again be another fireside chat format with JJ Vega. He is also very active on LinkedIn. He has been crowned the Kanban King. And a bunch of us on this call today have really encouraged him to step into that role. So he's going to come onto our fireside chat in 2 weeks and talk about LinkedIn and the power of building a professional brand and becoming a thought leader. And Anthony, I saw you here. I saw you come on in March 21st, so a month from today. Anthony will be here and we're going to talk about pivoting from failure and seeing these events in our life as a blessing to take the next step, because sometimes we need to be shaken up a little bit. But of course, we are here today to talk to the woman of the hour, Deepali, and we're going to have a fireside chat with her and talk to her about her journey. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to get started. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Deepali, are you ready?
Absolutely. Okay. Let's bring it on.
I know we've been looking forward to this for so long. I'm excited you're here. First thing I'd like you to do is introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what your current role is.
Sure. Thank you so much, Patty. Thank you for having me here. And I appreciate you creating and holding this space for others to be seen and heard and just share their journey and story. I'm Deepali, a Scrum Master and an Agile advocate. And I have been in the technology space for over 8 years now. And I have served teams and organizations in their Agile transformation and adoption. I have been fortunate to have worked for banks like Wells Fargo, Northern Trust, and currently in the consulting space with CGI. And yeah, I feel the best experiences in both life and at work are agile. I'm an engineer and I started my journey as a business analyst and naturally, but very organically became a Scrum Master early on. That said, I am passionate about building great teams and great places to work. Outside of work, I do enjoy reading, writing, and speaking in equal measure. And I also enjoy hosting, moderating, emceeing corporate events, and just bringing people together. That gives me a lot of joy. You see the glimmer in my eye. I am from India. I was born and raised in Lucknow. It is a city in the north of India. And I stayed down south in Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Chennai for work. I am currently located in Victoria, in beautiful British Columbia, here on the West Coast in Canada. My husband and I, we moved here close to 5 months ago. And yeah, my desire for reinventing myself, work opportunity, and adventure led me here. And I only hope that it serves me well and meets or say exceeds the hopes that I have. So yeah, that's about me, Patty.
Awesome. Well, thank you. As we've been talking with each other over the months, the excitement has been building for you to come here. But let's back up just a little bit and talk about how we know each other. So how did you show up here today?
That is a journey, sure. So there is a lot in terms of common connection, right? The fact that we have both worked for Wells Fargo, we are passionate Scrum Masters and voice of Agile, and I feel like I'm on a very similar journey as yours. And as we speak, I'm reminded I have followed you on LinkedIn right from the get-go when you started sharing your experiences and journey, and you were vocal about the imposter or air quoting the Scrumposter Syndrome. And when I saw that in 2020, a few years ago, it was very relatable. And you had the courage to put it out there. I love how you say that you work with teams and you turn them into well-oiled machines. And that to me stood out the most. And which also meant that you're a natural storyteller. So yeah, known you for a few years, and you were and are very easy to talk to. And from our conversations, which have been just pure gold, there is this ease that we have with each other. I think we share a lot of common values, and our journey from where we started to where we are, and Patty, specifically for you, from being an educator to being where you are right now, inspires me so much. And I have to tell you this, that I have seen you and almost never seen you not smiling. So I kept it, I wanted to say this right now. So I admire that a lot about you. And yeah.
Well, thank you. As I was talking to you earlier today, my car didn't start this morning, so I wasn't smiling then.
Only that makes for an exception.
Yeah, I remember, sometimes I get on calls with people and they tell me, I feel like I know you. They tell me you're a celebrity. And that was strange for me to hear at first. Because to me, like I always say, I'm sitting in the corner of my bedroom just talking on Zoom all day. But I have been putting myself out there on LinkedIn for a number of years now. And somewhere in the middle of last year, I think we started talking over DMs. And I think you were just so excited to talk with me. And I'm like, I'm just a regular person. And I said, come to the Power Hour. It's a great group. And you said, well, I'm in India. And I mean, I get it. That's like 12 hours away from here. So, I understood. And I said, okay, just keep following me. We'll keep chatting. And then fast forward a few months, I think this was like November of last year. We were chatting again in the DMs, and you're like, you're not going to believe this. I am moving to Canada. I can come to the Power Hour. I said, as soon as you get here and get settled, you have got to become a guest. Because we've gotten to know each other so well through LinkedIn. But I was so, you say you've been following me, I've been following your story, and I just am blown away by the fact that you and your husband just picked up and moved to the other side of the world. That to me is something that I've dreamed of doing, but it is a huge journey, physically, mentally, spiritually. There's a culture shock that happens, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But I wanted to show the audience here. I'm an avid jigsaw puzzler. I just finished one on New York City earlier today. But one of the times we were talking, and you said, "Oh, I live in Victoria." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I just got this puzzle I don't know if the audience could see this, but I just got this puzzle and it says Victoria. And I've never been there. I don't know anything about it. I loved the scenery of it. And you're like, oh, I recognize these landmarks. So it became a place for us to talk, right? Oh, Anthony, we're going to have a great time talking about puzzle. I do one puzzle and I rip it up and I start another one right away. I just love it. So that was so funny. Like, and I just wanted to share that with you and share that with the audience, because sometimes you have these moments of serendipity with people and then you're like, you're my people. And that's why I'm so excited to have you here. But let's get deeper into the chat. So you talked about how you were born and raised in India, and then 5 months ago, you and your husband came here. And I want you to talk to the listening audience here a little bit about why you decided to do that. Like, what made you do that?
Sure. And okay, so I think I'll just start with my story of being a Scrum Master and then eventually connect the dots, right? So
Yeah, sure.
for me, Patty, being a Scrum Master is incredibly fulfilling. It allows me to actionize positive changes and have an intersection between both business and technology to improve things, or at the literal least become a medium for that improvement, right? And help incremental improvements along the way. So it's interesting because I started out organically as a business analyst and transitioned and very naturally moved into this role. So 2 years into my career, I changed jobs and they were going through this enterprise-wide agile transformation, and hence this fell on the radar. And my honest ambition was just to do well at work. And also because I honestly thought they will think, look at this girl, so cool, and she learned it all so fast and is a good hire, right? So with that aspiration, I vividly remember coming home and reading up about what agile is, and just as importantly, what agile is not. I devoured the internet. I still continue to do so. And I found myself naturally interested in the role. I felt elated because it was a great fit, a right spot for me. I felt it's a great match with my skills, my experience, and my personality. I'm a people's person. Communication in every form drives me. Finding right words is literally like touching the sky, and no exaggeration here at all. I'm quite fascinated by organization culture, and facilitation is my most favorite thing in a day at work. And I know for a fact that Patty, have always wanted to do something that I love and I enjoy doing. And while I do so, put a lot of heart into it. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is have a plan, but be okay and don't panic if the plan changes. So I began the work and I learned a lot over these years, but there were many challenges, some subtle, some rather obvious. And when I reflect on my journey, I now see the biggest challenge that I had to overcome was to justify my place in the team and demonstrate the value of my own contributions. And because understandably so, I was new, and back then this idea, if not novel, was at least catching up. You know, it was just on the rise. And I struggled initially to make my voice heard. I felt unheard, invisible, and more often than not, I just wanted to hide. And Patty, believe me, back then I have been in meetings where people have been more in the organization than I have lived on this earth. So I felt little, and that I don't belong, and why will people listen to me, you know, and hence the imposter or the Scrumposter syndrome. And that bothered me. I knew something within me needed to change, that I matter and I have a voice. And in saying that, the other internal factor of struggle was my own desire for control. I am, or I'll say I was, a typical type A personality. So I did put my guard down with the hyper planning bit of it, but you know, it was a challenge. And the other major one that stood out the most for me was bringing in the mindset shift. And we all know, everybody on the call as change agents, this is extremely tricky because the root of it is mindset and the culture. Agile is a principle, agile is a mindset, and it is a set of values and beliefs that enables you to make better decisions. And it is my job to coach, mentor, and teach people to understand and live those values in actions, right? And you see, teaching others to change their beliefs or how they were used to working, essentially to create a mindset shift. And even as I speak that, it's not an easy undertaking, right? Like it does not come overnight at all. And I'm most certain all of you on the call can relate and tell me if we can ever change humans by imposing or by challenging their beliefs. Hands down, no, we simply cannot, right? And I knew that empowering and enabling others to navigate complexity and create maximum value is what I really enjoyed doing. So, yeah, challenges were in plenty, but the 5 Scrum values of courage, commitment, openness, respect, and focus became my anchor, became my guidepost, gave me direction, and just kept me on my path. And the thing is, teams and organizations differ with different set of challenges and opportunities, and there is no one size fits all. And that said, values drive our behavior and our action, our everyday interaction. And I just leverage these values. And as agile advocates, we know agile puts humans and interactions at the center of everything. So I just did exactly that. So I started scrumming with different teams, helped, coached, and supported teams in removing impediments for them. And I looked beyond the obvious stuff. So I participated in community of practices, even led in co-creating one, drafted agile newsletters, facilitated lean coffee sessions, conducted agile maturity assessments, helped in hiring decisions, and took very many sessions on the need for change. Why are we saying agile is important, and why do we think that there are some benefits that we can realize if we be this way, right? So basics and fundamentals of agile, Scrum, and other related concepts. And I did all of that in my role. And now why I did all of that, right? Because like I could have just been okay, doing what I was expected to do, but I wanted to look beyond the obvious and outside of my teams as well. And all of this while applying myself at what I'm good at, or I think I used my strengths, or so I believed. So I took my CSM in the end of 2017 and then PSM1 and PSM2 gradually. And in fact, last year I did my PMP as well, just to get a complete view of the old versus the new ways of working. Because in my mind, I think the context was broad and nuance was needed. And my line of thinking was, I want to do things because I have this urge or this instinct that I follow, and not saying that I dismiss the outside voice, but I generally listen to my heart and do what I want to, even if that is not the typical or the most common or conventional thing, right? So the thing is, always listen to the voice that whispers from inside you. It will rarely shout, it will whisper. And I don't know if all of you have read the 8 stances of Scrum Master, and if not, I would highly recommend you do that. And for me, it was always about value, right? I reminded myself to look beyond the obvious. I built a network of mentors who did and still continue to be my biggest support system. And I have to say this, the thing is that our corporate ecosystem, the landscape that we work with, is based, things are now changing, or was based on this antiquated model of predict accurately and plan accordingly. I heard this in a TEDx, and this has stayed with me ever since, right? But we cannot always predict what's coming. So we have to be so flexible and so agile, which meant over the years, I became a sponge. I created a climate of trust and psychological safety with my teams. So yeah, Patty, that has been my journey. And then somehow I turned my stress and fear, and that Scrumposter Syndrome into positive energy. And I decided to move to Canada.
So you have this huge story, and then it's like, oh, I'm moving to Canada.
yeah, because I wanted to, Patty, I wanted to take this risk, and because I believe that risks help you live, learn, and grow. That cannot happen in the cocoon of safety. And I'm a big believer of the fact that if you do not live on the edge, you're occupying too much of space. I wanted to discover more opportunities, diverse perspectives, and just really explore the country. And the fact that making unconventional decisions and choices which are off center enables you to define your career differently? So that's the long answer, rather very long answer. But the short answer is that I was afraid and I wanted to do it. So I did, because I genuinely wanted to meet myself on the other side of my fears. And I feel bad, and I'm sure most of you will relate. We all feel bad when we have that pit in our stomach, just fear crippling you down, that shaky feeling. I don't like that feeling at all. Like it's miserable. So I decided to explore and navigate my fears, and that has led me here, Patty.
Amazing. Well, that's why I was so excited to have you come and share your journey with us, because it's amazing. And I remember when we were talking, this was, last week or the week before, whatever it was. I mean, in the middle of our conversation, and I wrote this quote down because I'm like, I've got to like put this up on LinkedIn. And of course, attribute you, because this was so poignant. Life is a story, and stories are meant to be told. And you brought up the concept of the Scrum Master being a storyteller. And I 100% believe in that. I think when we look at the roles, especially when they're kind of traditionally explained, it's the product owner that's the storyteller. The product owner has to tell the story of the customer to the team and the stakeholders. But the Scrum Master is also a storyteller, because what I've leaned into in my moments of stepping into a team and feeling like, how do I show them my value? How do I, make my way in here and feel like I belong, right? Because they're in motion and I'm kind of jumping in onto this moving train. I lean into telling them stories. And I started doing that because I didn't know what else to do. So I get on one-on-one calls. I just have conversations like this with people. I talk about the crazy stuff going on outside my window in downtown Charlotte here. And I just share myself, and they really appreciate that, because I found so many people will come back and tell me nobody has ever talked to me in that way. It's always about business, and it's about work, and it's about getting tasks done. And you're the first person that has come to me and kind of just shared yourself with me. And what that does is it kind of breaks down walls. So they start to share with me, and then we build the trust and the psychological safety. But I say this with the caveat that many, many years ago, I never considered myself a storyteller. I said, I don't have any stories to tell. I wish I was that person. And I think I just had to start believing in myself, and I had to start doing it. So thank you for sharing your story. Let's jump into LinkedIn, because that's also an opportunity to share stories. And I've leaned into that platform so much in the past few years. And that's why you all are here. I had this spontaneous idea a few years ago to start a meetup. And I'm like, will anybody show up? Right? But you build the community. Thank you, Anthony. Right? You build the community and people start to show up. But it's that uncomfortableness of and I wrote this in my newsletter, was it this week or last week, how like one person showed up, then it was two, then it was three, and sitting with that uncomfortableness, like, am I really providing value? Like, why are not more people showing up? But then you give yourself and you get to know people, and it's like it's an exchange. It's an exchange of stories. So can you talk to us a little bit about your journey on LinkedIn? Like, where did you start, and what has been this path or these milestones that you followed to get to where you are today? Because we know you from LinkedIn too. You're LinkedIn famous as well.
Right. Thanks, Patty. So yeah, LinkedIn, I just got distracted with famous. LinkedIn is a great platform, and I have been there for a while, for the most part of my career, but it's only recently that I have gotten active. And I recognized the power of LinkedIn when I landed both my roles, current role and the previous one, via LinkedIn. But I always thought maybe I'm too mediocre to do it. So professionally, it helped me a lot, land jobs, learn so much every single day from people, leaders and practitioners who are in the same space. But now I post and engage actively, and it was unconventional and intimidating for me to show up every day. So this constant voice kept nagging. Why me? Why will people listen? But hesitantly so, I gave into my gut. I kept fighting the imposter in me. And so I think we all experience the imposter syndrome at some point in our lives, right? And I did that too. So I was good in school. I have been a scholar, and I came out in the real world and I found everyone is just as good and maybe even better. And some people are untouchable. So that began my quest of, okay, what am I even doing here? What makes me stand out? Or, how do I stand apart? And I kept grappling with that, and like, how does one go about feeling that way? So putting myself out there was challenging, but also freeing at the same time. And so that felt like half of the battle was won. And Patty, we briefly spoke about this, right? I always felt I have so much to share, and I was feeling congested, like I was brimming till here. And that itch of wanting to do something creative never really fully went away. But then somehow I gathered, mustered courage, and summoned up all my strength to cross this Rubicon. And it's safe to say that there's no looking back. And in all of this, I kept convincing myself, how will people know me? Like, how will they know what my values are? What my aspirations are, what I believe in, what can I bring to the table? Because, hey, let's be real, no one will discover me, right? I enjoy public speaking and I wanted to be a journalist, and I was also that irritating kid in the class who would raise their hand up just to read the book, go on the stage, participate in the debate, and just be in the limelight all the time. Right. But I never did anything concretely about it. It was somewhere around, like it was somewhere at the back of my mind. And that's important to know what you're chasing. Otherwise, you will forever be chasing. You will constantly be chasing. And it's a vicious cycle with no end in sight. And that happened to me. So, yeah, I decided to show up on the platform and just see how it unfolds for me. And yeah, that's my why. And a wonderful benefit is the community of people, like a tribe to support each other. Some of you are also present here. I see you. And it threw open a world, right? A huge world of possibilities for me. Who would have ever thought of meeting people from across the globe as we can do today, just to co-create, build things, share experiences like we are literally doing in this hour with you today, Patty. And essentially, so I'm building a personal brand and really want to be known and credentialed for what I'm good at. And I value consistency a lot. So I'm just building it over time and just see where it takes me. And Patty, in the end, can I just say this on behalf of everyone here, that this meetup, this group that you've created for all of us, we benefit tremendously out of this. And it would have not been possible if it wasn't for all of us being active here on LinkedIn, right? So yeah, Patty, that has been the journey of being active on LinkedIn so far.
Yes, and I've been on my own journey for the past few years, and when you first get started, it's like, who am I? Everybody joins at a certain point in time, right? And everybody else has been on there forever at that point. You're the last one of the game. So what do you have to add to the conversation? How do you become visible to people, right? Because there's millions of people on that platform. And it's kind of like having the courage to just start typing and putting things out there. And, at first, nobody responds, right? There's no engagement. And then eventually some people will start to like your posts. And I'm like, oh, do they feel bad for me because I only have 4 likes? And as much as you say, I'm not here to chase likes, it hurts your ego a little bit, right? When you see you don't get any engagement, but you have to keep showing up and realize that people are watching. And that's why when people call me up on Zoom, it's not the phone anymore. They're like, I've been following you forever. I love what you stand for. They say all these things. I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, you're a celebrity. I'm like, I'm not. but that's the perception, because you don't realize everybody's actually watching you, even though they don't comment or engage. And I wanted to point out, and I said this to you before, we let everybody in to the meeting here. The registrations for this one are the highest I've ever had. 91 people and counting. Like, that's huge. And they're showing up, yes, for each other. They're showing up, because I put this group together, but they're also showing up for you. So if you ever wonder, are people listening? Did they see me? Do I belong here? Yes, because we've all showed up to hear your story.
Yeah, this is such a powerful validation for me, Patty. You have no idea. Because when you asked me to come here to talk, as excited as I was like, oh my God, I need to go and hide myself under the bed. Like, why, Patty? Why me? Why did you even think of me being a part of this forum right here? So yeah, I appreciate all of that. And this is a very humbling experience for me.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Yeah, there you go. We're so glad you're here. No, it's amazing to just to talk with you and everybody that I connect with. I mention your name and they know you. And they say you're the most positive person they've ever met, the most supportive, the most generous, like just these incredible adjectives that people will say to me. And I'm like, I 100% agree with you, because that's my experience as well. And that's why I'm like, I've got to bring you here. Because I love talking to you. I could talk to you all day.
So can I, believe me. Yeah.
All right. Before we open up to questions, this is off topic. I mean, it's not off topic, but it's off my little script here. When things get really difficult and you want to hide under the bed, right? And you don't want to show up because you feel like you're being pushed out of your comfort zone. Maybe this is a moment for you, right? What do you reach down and grab onto to help you get through those moments?
Yeah, I think, and I have very many moments like that in a day and
We all do.
in a week, right? So no hiding there. So yeah, I just have learned to accept and acknowledge the fact, Patty, that I am going to have these moments, but these moments are going to define my growth, right? So we all have to understand and come to an understanding and acceptance of who we are and how we do things and just how we show up, right? Because this nagging voice kept telling me always that maybe I'm not good enough and there are smarter, wiser, better people out in the world. But I have just learned to embrace this uncertainty. And now every time, and this is a very stark change, which is slightly a contradiction, every time I feel like I'm running away from something, I actually literally consciously on an active basis take effort, and it takes a lot of courage. It's like, oh my God, awful feeling of discomfort, right? But I just now tell to myself, if ever I find myself running in the opposite direction, I start running towards it, right? And these are very difficult conversations that I keep having with myself. I have an incredible family who supports me, and then I'm open and I'm able to share with them. So it's just like a lot of internal work on learning and relearning of sorts that I do. And then I just roll with that, because I've realized, Patty, that I will never feel ready. Like, and tell me, and if we all can relate, do we ever feel ready? At least I know I don't, right? So I may put in 10,000 hours and I will still not be ready, and I will be like, oh my God, why did I say a yes to this? But then I still do it, right? And this fireside chat is one such example. Classic example. You asked me, I said yes, resounding yes, but in my heart I was like, resounding no. I don't want to do it. Why do you want to bring me on? So yeah, I just have learned to tell myself that I'm never ready, but I have to show up, because these moments are the moments that will define my growth. And that's how I take it now.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about imposter syndrome. I use the term Scrumposter Syndrome. I wish I made that up. One of my coaches, she watched me doing what I do, and she said to me, you help people with Scrumposter Syndrome. I'm like, I wish I thought of that but I'm going to steal it. So I want to give somebody else credit for coming up, but it's like we step into Scrum makes us feel like imposters sometimes. And to your point, and this is exactly what I do, when I feel like I want to run away, I turn around and run towards it. And it's so difficult. But I think that if we are not constantly on that edge of uncomfortableness, we are not growing and stretching, and we're stagnant. And then you can only go backwards from there, right? Mm-hmm. So as long as we're doing bigger and bigger things, we're always going to feel that discomfort. And that's why it's so important to have a community of people that you can lean into and get support from. Because we can't do this on our own. Like, we can't go into companies and perform miracles and make everybody like magically do Scrum and Agile, whatever that means, right? There's a lot of helping people unlearn hardwired behaviors, and that's really scary. And I think if you go through those scary moments yourself and get through onto the other side, you can then help people along on that journey as well. Because you can tell them very confidently, I made it, so can you. So that's why it's always so important for us to live up to those Scrum values. And they're all intertwined, right? Anything else you want to say before we open it up to the audience? I'm sure they're like itching to ask some questions.
No, I'm glad, and we can definitely take questions, but just when I mentioned that my husband and I, we packed our bags, and with 4 bags, we just moved here with a lot of fire and hope. And hope is an incredibly powerful thing. And the only thing that has stood out for me the most, Patty, and I did mention this to you, that culture change is almost always used in a negative connotation, right? Like a culture shock. So culture shock is what? Is this sudden feeling of confusion about moving to a new place, to a foreign place, or by venturing into unknown, right? So, but for me, it was a really pleasant experience, right? I have found both opportunity and acceptance in great abundance, right? Unfortunately, there was no shock or struggle that I had to endure. So it also has to do a lot with how you choose to see it, right? It's your choice of how you decide to see it, and then the entire reality changes. And this I have felt very strongly, because I was supremely positive about my move here, and it turned out to be a great decision, and it turned out well for the two of us, right? But not trying to paint a perfect picture here. Believe me, there are bad days when I feel like a fish out of water, and like I have these days very frequently when I question everything. But it's just a matter of you dusting it off and just move on, and just believe in yourself, keep going, and trust the process.
Amazing. Yes, thank you for talking about that. Because I know it is, I mean, even in the United States, me moving from New York down, originally I moved to Atlanta, it was a huge culture shock for me, because I was used to my little New York bubble, and I guess I assumed everything would be like New York, and it wasn't. So it was really difficult, but I grew from it. I saw it as an opportunity, as difficult as it was. So I've been there. You just got to pick yourself up and keep going, and realize that you're in that place for a reason. Awesome. All right. Well, let's put this out to the audience. I think we have a huge crowd today. I guess just like put your hand up, with the reaction button and I'll call on you. I saw Walter. We'll have you go first. You've had your hand up for a bit. What do you got for us, Walter?
Hey, hi. So quick question. So I'm really active on LinkedIn. So as a new Scrum Master, trying to do things according to the Scrum Guide and follow the values. I see a lot of experts, Scrumologists, if that makes sense, saying, hey, it's okay to not follow the Scrum Guide to a T, which is a bit misleading. An example that I read recently was a Scrum guru said, hey, you should be able to allow your teams to switch out sprints within sprints. And I thought that was a little bit odd when I read it, but that's what he said, and he's a guru, allegedly, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, Walter, and certainly a tricky one because and you know it can
Can of
divide.
worms.
Yeah, it's like it can divide the room into like very many varying and debatable opinions. So like, and I can speak on my behalf. So what I have done is every time I try and implement something, I kind of teach, coach, mentor my team on applying Scrum and just agile principles in general. I do it. I follow the Scrum guide, but then I also take into account the context and situation and my team's maturity and where they are in their own journey, right? So it is one thing to take everything and, you know, dump it over on the team, but it is another to really understand if they are in that situation or if they have the capacity to absorb it in the moment. Because one thing I've realized that when we try and bring too many changes, right? Like too many changes too frequently with our teams, that unfortunately and ironically leads to change plateau, right? Then people trade out afterward, like why they're trying to bring so many changes all at the same time. So I think it's imperative to understand the context and the situation and the maturity of your team, and then go about and apply these principles, right? And get the transformation from within. So Scrum values cannot be mandated. They can only be lived in action. So you start, you take the lead by example, and then others will follow suit. Right. So, and I hope that helps.
Yeah, I was just to kind of piggyback on that. And Gawain, what you said in the chat is exactly what I was going to say. You've got to meet your team where they are. You can't just come in and dump everything on them because, I mean, it causes people to get very upset, right? To say the least. Understand that it's gradual change. And as long as you're moving in the direction, that's positive. And I think we'll leave it at that. We could probably do a whole other fireside chat on that.
Just on this topic.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Walter. Okay, Will, you're up next.
Can you hear me now? How about that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I had a question, but the comment you just made me think of another. And you know, yes, one of my experiences is yes, it's always important to fit in with the team and the culture, but sometimes you've been hired for the purpose of leadership, and they want you to grab the bull by the horns and say, let's do it this way. And so I think it's important to read your team, read your culture, read your people you report to get that right, because I've been in a situation where that was the expectation. I didn't realize it. Which leads me to my original question. I did type it in the chat session. I just find that Scrum Mastering is so much about being a change manager. And I'm just wanting to kind of poll the audience, and specifically Deepali, do you follow any specific change management method? You know, there's ADKAR, there's Cotter, there's 7S's, there's a whole myriad of them. So I'm just curious of your thoughts and anybody else who'd like to comment. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. Well, that's a great question. And there are two parts to it, right? One, I will say we are definitely hired and we have found our place on the map and on the ground because we are change agents, right? After all, it's our job to really bring about and influence those positive changes. And I want to go ahead and mention that it's about influencing without that authority, right? Because gone are the days of command and control and like, you know, dictating people by the deadlines. And we cannot do that. We really genuinely have to address the root, if I may, and not the branches, right? And so in my personal experience and through these years of being a Scrum Master and scrumming with different teams, I exactly did that. And when it comes to change management framework, I have read about them, but like I really don't, I don't take them by the book. Yeah, so with change management, I have read up about them, but it's not particular that I apply any one of them. I just see how team is responding, what applies best in which context and in which situation, and then roll with that.
All right, I think, let's see, who is next? Ray?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm from South Africa. Yes, I'm from Masala. It's Ria, the site. Yes, thank you. I just have a question. So I'm an aspiring Scrum Master, and then we are working on a project. It's just an introduction. So our team is still in its early stages, and we are struggling to deliver increments due to our skill. So as a Scrum Master, how can I encourage my team to become more interested and engaged in their role?
Yeah, so Ria, to your question, right? So you're starting out and you're an aspiring Scrum Master and you have team members who are probably not willing or are convinced to do it incrementally, right? So I'm going to say, because you're aspiring Scrum Master, I think I would recommend you start by reading the Scrum Guide and then take few examples and concepts and discuss them with your team, and don't discuss it with the intention of bringing the change or imposing the change on them, but just like have a casual one-to-one conversation. So the thing that I have used and has worked really well with me is when I go and talk to my team members who are less experienced when it comes to Agile and Scrum, and they don't completely get it all through no fault of their own, but simply because they were conditioned to work in a certain way. I do not specifically use the word Agile and Scrum. And that's like a cheat code. That's a trick that I use, because the moment I say Agile and Scrum, it's like, oh my God, everything is new. And then I promise them that there is no extra work involved. Just hear me out. How do you think about this, right? Say, for example, if you can relate with them, say, for example, you can give them a story. Say, for example, you say, okay, how about a project of building a house or renovating my kitchen or renovating my living room, right? Would you want to do it all in a go, like dug up things everywhere and make it a colossal mess? Or do you want to make it more structured, do it incrementally, take the feedback, ask your family how it looks like, right? Is your wife or your partner happy with the color of the walls? Are your kids happy? And then you go about it, right? So do not use the terms and just share personal stories to kind of show them and tell them that if we go this way, we probably will have these and these benefits that we can realize, right? So I think if you start like that, it will certainly help you.
Thank you. Let's see, Pedro, you're up next.
Hey everyone. Thank you so much for doing this, Patty and Deepali. I really appreciate you being here. So first time attendee, right? I am a baby Scrum Master, so I'm making a huge transition from my current job field to Scrum Master side. So I guess mine's gonna be pretty foundational. Like my question is like, for someone who's just getting into this, what skill do you recommend kind of really sharpening up? Any type of research you recommend reading up on, and any type of exercises that you recommend doing to help become a better Scrum Master?
Sure, that's a good question. So I would actually recommend you start out by reading the Scrum Guide. And just for me, how it worked is that this role was an intersection between my experience, my interest, and my personality, right? So if you think that you do enjoy doing this kind of work, probably a good starting point can be the Scrum Guide. And then, when it comes to sharpening your skills or become competitive with some skills that you have, maybe you can just practice active listening or like intentional listening, and then look at every opportunity or every discussion as some kind of a conversation that can give you volume of feedback, right? So I know I have done that. Like every time I join a new team or I'm scrumming with a new team as a Scrum Master, I don't open my mouth as much, right? As much as I would want to, but I just simply pay a lot of attention and just observe how things are going. So the power of observation, the power of active listenings, and then open it up, right? Build trust with each of your team members. And as Scrum Masters, it's most often that we are here to facilitate Scrum events, right? It's not just that. So you have to build that bond, create that trust with your team members individually, one-on-one, and just listen to them. Just understand from their perspective what their their problems are, right? What are the challenges that they think that the team is facing or they are facing, and what are the recommended ways or approaches of, going past that. So if you practice these three, in like 3 months or 4 months, probably your team will of course build a lot of trust with you. And when we develop that trust, when we develop that factor of likability, say for example, I like my scrum master or my lead, like in the most nice and kind way, I know that this person is saying something of value, is saying something of substance, and that can give me some benefits if I apply. So if you leverage those things well, I think it can definitely help you.
Excellent, thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Let's see, who else do we have? Timonette, I think you were next.
Yes. Hi everyone. It's my first time attending here. It was a really good meeting. I'm so excited to meet you, Patty. So my question, I'm also a baby Scrum Master. Probably been a Scrum Master for about 6 months to a year. So I've been having like difficulties with estimation for stories. So my team like gives points, like they do 0.5 and 0.25, and I try to coach them to use like 1 or 2 as a pointer, but they basically make stories for BAU. So how do I help them stay away from that and not just make stories for every task and use it as a reminder? Because if they feel as though if they don't make a story for it, they won't remember it and follow up on it. So they make a story and then point it as 0.5. So yes, thank you again.
Yeah, so stories are essentially what, like they are tools to deliver value, right? And now again, this entire concept of estimation can open another fireside chat. But the point is that we have to make our teams understand the importance of user stories. Why do we need them? And then why do we even think that estimation is going to help us or help the team in first place, right? So with me, what I have personally always felt helps is the fact that you go out in the team and tell them that what are we even trying to estimate, right? And estimation is a relative way of measurement. It could mean different things to different people, right? So when we assign story points, we are doing this estimation or relative measure. Say, for example, I'm taking into account the complexity, the volume of work involved when I'm saying that this story represents this work or this value that it will deliver. And I also take into account what are the unknowns, right? What are the gray areas that I don't know? So it is essentially you telling your team that we are going to talk about the complexity of the work, the volume of the work, and also if there is anything at all that we don't know about, right? So just start small with that. And one anti-pattern that is very, very visible and apparent is the fact that we try and put hours to stories, right? It is a double-edged sword. We cannot say one story point is equal to 0.5 hours or 0.25 hours or whatever, right? So just try and listen from them on what their observation is of how much work is really involved, what is essentially the complexity or the volume of work, and try and make it relative. There are various methods of story pointing and estimations, right? T-shirt method and planning poker and things like that. But you just have to make them first understand that this is all relative to the simplest work, and then we move on to the complexity of medium and complex. So I think this is some maturity that definitely comes with time and will take a lot of practice before we could say that, okay, we are doing estimations right.
Thank you so much.
All right, I think we are about time. We could probably chat all evening, and for some of us, morning, right? Well, thank you so much. Did you want to add any closing words or give us any kind of send off to this evening?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for this free flowing conversation, Patty. And it's comforting and reassuring to be able to integrate and share my own story. And I really appreciate everybody's time here. And I just realized we are total 78 participants, which is mind blowing. So yeah, let's connect on LinkedIn, and I talk about agile, Scrum, culture, leadership, and just a lot of these general life observations and personal experiences that I have in my journey. So feel free to connect if that interests you. Please come along, and I'm also open to doing coffee chats. So I'd love to speak one-on-one as well. So yeah, I appreciate your time today.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and helping us build this community. It's so important. We all get so much value from this. Just a reminder to everybody, in 2 weeks, we're going to have JJ Vega come. We're going to continue the conversation about LinkedIn and building a professional brand, and some of the pitfalls we've run into, and how to get through those tough moments where you want to quit. Because LinkedIn can be a tough crowd sometimes, especially in the Agile community. I know I've certainly dealt with that. So thank you all for coming. Like I mentioned, this has been recorded. I will clean up the recording. I will email it out to everybody on Monday, and I look forward to seeing you next time.